Yo, how you doing, 369? I found this map on Reddit and I just thought it would fit perfectly into this thinking pillar theme that we are currently having. And now I don't have the map in front of me, but you see it on the screen, of course. And I took some notes and I just thought, let me think about this map. Let me try to see some, consequences, for example, or generally patterns that I'm now going to try to interpret this map for you, trying to analyze the map for you. And I want you to, of course, take a look with me at this map and write down your opinion then later on. And first of all, I don't know if I can really say it on YouTube, but this map shows like the corn star capita per million inhabitants in Europe. I mean, it would be also quite interesting to see it for Asia, Africa, or generally the whole world, but I found this map for Europe, so let's consider this specific region here. And now that we talk about Europe, let's first of all take a look at the numbers, and there we can see that the highest number is there in the Czech Republic and in Hungary, and also in Latvia, and the more middle ranged numbers is, for example, Russia, Germany, Netherlands, France, and so on. And then the lower numbers is, for example, Northern Europe, Italy, or Swiss, Austria, Balkan countries. So let's now first take a look at the cultural aspect, and there we see that like the Balkan region or Russia, they're not really open to this corn industry thing, and that's also because of their religion, like Christian parts, but also Islamic parts, where we then just generally see there's always this taboo around sexuality, and that's why the numbers are most definitely lower here, even though Russia, it has such a high population, and the population is not really dense because the country is massive, but the population is quite high, and there we can see that it's still a lot, like 5 cornsters per million inhabitants. I don't really know the numbers of inhabitants in Russia, but it's quite high because I would suggest the population is high. And then we see that Western Europe is more open to it. It's also more legalized. So this should explain the numbers a bit better. The question that I then ask myself is, how can it be that like Czech Republic, Hungary, or Latvia have such high numbers? And so I've done a bit research and to explain Hungary, because it's more of harder to find information about it. We see that there are a lot of camming websites that have been established, and where then, this just has set it in this country, even though we see with Viktor Orban that like it's more of a conservative country, more of a conservative politics, but still it's second place in Europe, or I also think second place worldwide actually, which is crazy. And what also plays a role on this is that we have low taxes on this adult content thing, and also rural poverty, which then leads to those people going into the bigger cities like Budapest, where they are, for example, going in this industry because they need money. You see Iceland here on this map, and it has zero, which is insane. But I try to explain this to me, and I'm not saying that I have the final answer to this question, but I would suggest, first of all, Iceland only has 300,000 people that live there, so the population is generally quite low. They have a good welfare system, and minimum wage is also quite high. I mean, prices are also crazy, but still, the minimum wage in Iceland is generally very stable, and also the jobs are being passed down. And because like the jobs are so stable and are being passed down, the people will rather go into a job that is like normalized and stable instead of going into a riskier gig like this industry. And the highest number is here the Czech Republic, and this has a bit of a backstory. First of all, Czech Republic is an atheistic country because of communist era, where basically the Christian church was destroyed through communist Soviet era, and then the corn thing has been legalized in 1993. Prague is actually the capital of this industry. So to say, the second largest website for this thing is hosted, or the headquarters are in Prague, and they have a lot of openness to sexuality, like LGBTQ rights and so on. So it's really just an established thing. Also, we can see, or generally call Prague or Czech Republic to the gate to the Eastern Europe side, or to the Eastern world, so to say. And it was like back in the 80s, 90s, the people went out, or like men went out to prey on younger girls that were living in more rural areas that had less money and really try to survive. They captured them in, put them into this industry, gave them money, but also exploited them. So it has a reason, and it's a bit darker, but it has a reason. Let's consider some patterns here, and I already explained them a bit. So we see, for example, lowest numbers, northern countries, Iceland, Balkan countries, because of religion, because of generally the happiness index is high in these northern countries. I would suggest that this also plays a role, but also the general view on this thing. In the Western countries like Germany, France, Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, UK, high number, we see it's legalized, it's a bit more normalized, and yeah, the GDP is quite high, so people can choose what they want to become. Balkan countries' GDP is lower. You would think, or I would think, that if the GDP is lower, people would rather go into these jobs because the promise of making good money is there, but it's not the case because it's more about honor in the Balkan countries. It's more about respect to oneself and to others, and it's just how they see this. That's not how I would imagined, how I would have thought about it. Now I must say that I don't really have much more points. If you have anything that you would also consider, write it down in the comments. I must say that I don't really have much more to say here. And for me, let's conclude it here. We see that Czech Republic and Hungary have the highest numbers. Latvia also high number. This is because also this exploitation thing in the Balkan routes, where they basically took girls from rural areas and put it to Latvia, and then put them in this industry. So we see that it's more of a dark thing, but the numbers are quite insane, and now I try to reason why. Then we see that if the country has higher GDP, if it's legalized and normalized, then the numbers are also higher. And if we have this more religious, more honor and respect background, like for example in the Balkan countries, then we see that the number is generally lower. So if you enjoyed this quick analysis, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. Then we see each other once again on the Thinking Pillar this month on this channel.